अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टां स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवंश श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तां सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपदान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्ण प्रेम पदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नामने गौरतुसे नमः। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्तते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी श्री राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार शिवासादि गौ भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So we welcome once again everyone for today's Bhakti Shastri discussion that we are doing from Isopanisad. Last time when we began our discussion, we were on the fifth verse. So we'll take a look at it. One quick second. There's a presentation here. Yeah. So text 5. Tad ejayati tan najayati taddure tattva antike tadantarasya sarvasya tatya sarvasasya bhayataha. So we had discussed this mantra last time. Although we couldn't complete it, we had done almost 3/4 of the discussion. 1/4 which is remaining, that we'll cover today. And then we'll go to the third section of Īśopaniṣad, starting from verse number 6. That will be the kind of a discussion we'll be doing today. So here, in essence, in this verse, it is described that which has been referred in the 4th verse, anejadekam manaso javiyo. And that was the qualities, the contradictory nature of the Supreme Personality Godhead, or else the inconceivable nature of the Supreme Personality Godhead was elaborated. And that particular theme continues on to the text 5, where it is said, Tad ejeti, tan najeti. He walks, does not walk. Tad dure, tadvantike. He is very far and he is very near. Tadantarasya sarvasya. He is within everything. Tadya sarvas asya bhayata. And also outside of everything. So before we begin our discussion, what walks and what does not walks? Hare Krishna. Anyone? We had discussed last time. So tat ejeti tan najeti. What walk and what does not walk? Yes, Mukundan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes.
So as we discussed that among the three realizations that we can have of the absolute truth. So Brahman doesn't walk and Bhagavan walks.
So that's a very important concept which Mukundan Prabhu was just speaking about. Our Vaishnava theology or the philosophy teaches that the absolute truth is perceived or realized at 3 levels. Vadanti tat tattvavidas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti pramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdyate. So these are the 3 features of the absolute truth. Unfortunately, we had discussed, I believe, in the previous session also, the Gyanis, on the basis of the limit of their understanding, they draw different conclusions about the absolute truth. Srila Prabhupada therefore repetitively mentions in his writings and speaks in his lectures that the absolute truth can only be understood when being heard or when we have learnt about him from a bona fide sources, bona fide authority. And actually, it's not Srila Prabhupada is making a point like that. In fact, Lord Shri Krishna himself makes this point in the 7th chapter, verse number 1, that Arjuna, now I will speak about me and you should hear from me. Tat Shrinu. And then 7th chapter onwards, when we'll come to Bhagavad Gita, we'll see up to the 12th chapter, largely Lord Shri Krishna is speaking about himself. Of course, Arjuna asks some questions here and there. But the point is, when it comes to learning about the absolute truth, it cannot be experimented, it cannot be researched. We cannot do it on our endeavor. The knowledge about the absolute truth is revealed, and that is revealed by the blessings of the Guru and Vaishnavas. And that is how we can understand the absolute truth. Otherwise, it's not possible. So yes, tad ejeti, tad najeti. Second point was tad dure, tadvantike. The Lord is very far, very near. What was the meaning of it? Tad dure, tadvantike. So who knows the answer for it?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
So for the atheists, the Lord is very far, but for the devotees, He is near to them.
Perfect. Very good. What else? There was another point. I see Mother Jyoti and Deepak was writing. Krishna as Paramatma is within us. Taddure tadvantike. And also as a Supreme Personality Godhead, He is always residing in Goloka Vrindavan. Right? So that was another thing. Tadanta sarvasya tadya sarvasya bhayata, that refers to Paramatma, and bhayata, which means He exists outside of us in everything that is like a Virat Roop. Correct. So let's go back to the presentation. Not going too much details, but we'll just see or recap a few things and then we'll move forward. So this was the overview of the whole purport. There are 9 to 10 paragraphs. So we had initially the first paragraph, Prabhupada talks about Supreme must be inconceivable. Why Supreme must be inconceivable? Any answers? Why Supreme has to be beyond our understanding? Prabhupada says Supreme must be inconceivable. Not that Supreme is conceivable. Okay? Mother Jyoti is typing in pretty quick. Before any one of you can raise your hands, her answer comes on the chat. So I don't see the, oh yeah, there they are sitting. Okay, I can see them now. So they're preferring not to raise their hands, they're preferring to type in today. Okay. I would say better you raise your hands, because if you type in the right answers, then others don't have an opportunity to reflect or recall. Okay. So yes, that's correct. Where is the comment I just saw? Yes, else He won't be supreme. You know, if He is conceivable, if it can be understood by us, then it means our mind is greater than Him, isn't it? Now, for our mind to be inferior to the absolute truth, which means absolute should be greater than our mind. And that is a point Prabhupada established in the very first paragraph, that Supreme must be inconceivable. So let's go back again. How absolute truth is far yet near was discussed, and then we had a discussion on science of deity worship. So another point that we had discussed last time about absolute truth being very near yet very far, Prabhupada in the purport talks about deity. And we had discussed about there are 5 types of deities, different levels of Archa Vigraha there that we had discussed last time. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead manifests Himself in a material form. So last time we had discussed at length that how Krishna, or how the Supreme Personality of Godhead by his will can transform his spiritual energy into material energy and material energy into spiritual energy. And then we had made a comparison with Abrahamic religions and traditions where they consider it to be a serious blasphemy if the absolute truth, according to their understanding, is carved in a deity form or is drawn in a picture form. I hope all of you are familiar with this, right? And that is the reason atheists, particularly Islam, have taken a very strong radical point of view. I would not say for everyone, but majority it seems to be that they kind of hate deities. So there they take it very seriously, and we have discussed the reason. Anyone remembers why they kind of hate this idea of deity worship?
Because they don't believe in the form of the Lord.
No, not like that. And both in Bible as well as in Quran, there are references. Like in Quran, there is a prose which says the Lord has very beautiful eyes. That was not the subject matter we had discussed. What's the point? Why they consider it to be a serious blasphemy? They have inherently put a limitation on the absolute truth. They think the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot do this thing. That's the reason they consider it. It's a very important point. I'm not...
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhu. So they don't believe that matter and spirit come from the same source, which is the Supreme Lord. So they treat material energy separate from spiritual energy.
Correct.
And they don't believe that the Supreme Lord can convert one into another.
And therefore, for that reason, we had referred Bhagavad Gita 7 chapter verse number 4 and 5 last time, where we said, this is what they miss out. Bhumir apon alavayu kham manobadhare evacha hankar ityamte bhinna prakritira. Shri Krishna says, matter is my energy. And I had given an example of an AC, if you remember, in a car. I said, if a car is yours and if you have an AC, you can decide if your AC wants to give you hot air or a cool air. Remember now? That was in context of this, which means as the owner of the car, owner of the AC, you can decide what kind of, you can transform the same electrical energy into a heat wave or a cold wave. Similarly, the Supreme Personality Godhead, why can't he convert his own energy from one form to another? Even the modern day scientists believe the energy is convertible. So can't the Supreme Personality of Godhead convert his one form of energy into another? So this is where they kind of get stuck. So inherently, they have put a limitation on the absolute truth, but the absolute truth cannot do it. So to counter argue this, we had put another point, that how there is a, there is a, what should I say? In their understanding that deity worship is should be prohibited, why they are wrong in it. And I had put a counter argument. Anyone remembers? They say we should not worship deity if you go to church, you go to mosque, you go to the temple of fire for Zoroastrians, for anything. You never see a deity from there. You'll see a book, either be Torah, either be Bible or the Holy Quran. Even in Gurudwara, the Holy Granth Sahib, you'll see a book, but you'll not see a deity form. So we had given a counter argument to their understanding that the absolute truth cannot be represented as a deity. Anyone remembers the counter argument? Murli Mohan Prabhu, where are you? Yes, Murli Mohan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Last time we were discussing that if this deity worship is going to be destroyed or it can be, then their books also can be destroyed. It is not like book will be eternal. That's what we speak.
Yeah, so not exactly like that I had put it. I had said matter decays. Even the Holy Scripture is made up of matter. And if there is a fire in the temple, this is too much of a faith to believe that everything will get burnt out, but the book will not be harmed.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody roughly handles the holy book, the book will get torn apart, yes or no? Because the book, gets destroyed, the holy book gets destroyed, it does not mean that the sacredness of the book is missing. The sacredness of the holy literature is not based on if it can protect itself or not. The sacredness of the holy book is based on the message given there. Similarly, the sacredness of the deity is not in that can protect itself or not, can it protect its devotees or not. The sacredness of the deity is, has it been installed according to Vedic traditions and has it been worshipped with love? Then the sacredness of deity is manifested, because the deity form of the Lord, or the Lord takes a deity form not to serve others or not to protect the devotees. Nowhere Krishna says anywhere that I take a deity form to protect. Krishna says I appear, I descend in this world myself, in my self-made form, self-same form, to protect the devotees. He never says I take a deity form for that purpose. The purpose of the deity form that Krishna takes, anyone knows? Why does Lord takes the deity form? What is the purpose of the deity form of the Lord? Please raise your hands.
Sorry. Lord appear in Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Lord appear in the deity form so that the devotees can take care of him and can offer the services to him. So basically, the Lord deity form is the Vatsalya form.
Correct.
So that just the people can render service.
Yes, that's an opportunity. Now, thank you, Madhusha. That's the correct answer. Let me ask a follow-up question to this, because we had discussed elaborately last week on this. Now, why Lord has to take a deity form to accept service from us? Why Lord has to take a deity form to accept service from us? That's my question. Mother Medhavni, go ahead.
Yeah, so as living entities, we can perceive only something that is material. So the Lord, being merciful, has appeared in material form so that we get an opportunity to perceive and, we touch the deities, we serve the deities, we bless the deities. So that kind of opportunity is provided by the Lord by appearing in a material form, because that is what we can perceive at this current moment.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur speaks about this subject matter, and he says categorically, for a neophyte, we're going to talk about it in the 6th verse today. The word neophyte means a new devotee, in the beginning stages of their spiritual life. For them to connect with the absolute truth, they need a representation of the form. We are trying to love the Lord. Love involves service. To be able to serve, there has to be some, sensory perception. Yes. You have to have some sensory perception. Now, you go to temple, you look at the beautiful deities. Now, doesn't our heart becomes gladdened when we see the beautiful deities? Similarly, you go to some temples where deities have not been taken care properly. Doesn't your heart becomes very sad? And now imagine you go to a place of worship where there is no deity. You wonder, what am I doing here now? Have you had that experience? How many of you had been to Lotus Temple in Delhi? So I was a small kid that time when I went along with my parents, and I still remember that deep impression on my mind. Lotus Temple, being grown up in India, the temple means deities. I'll give you, by the way, anyone knows what is Lotus? Okay, let's raise hands if you don't know what is Lotus Temple of Delhi. So I'll give you a little background. You can raise your hand, physical hand, then I'll give you a little bit background to it. Okay. All right. So there was this, I'll not go too much in history. Around 200 years ago, there was a prophet back in Iran, if I exactly remember, who had started this a spiritual movement where he said, God is one, either be Allah, either be Krishna, Rama, Christ, everything is one. He had spoken on that kind of principle of oneness to promote humanity, to promote, sense of peace in the society. And therefore, he had built huge temples. Okay, nobody's from America here. Otherwise, Chicago has a huge temple. I forgot this organization name. So if you go there, although they call it as a temple, but it is just a meditation hall. There is nothing in the temple. There are empty chairs, and you're not allowed to even breathe heavily. As soon as you make little noise, people come from there. Shh, silent zone. You're not supposed to speak here. So when I went for the first time, I was so shocked. I said, you said this is a temple. And Lotus Temple back in Delhi, I believe in Lodi Garden, if I'm correct. Huge place, beautiful gardens and everything. Today is only a tourist spot. So imagine any one of us go there. How do we connect to the Lord? They say it's a place of meditation. What do I meditate on? On what? Now, in other traditions, they try to meditate on the names of the Lord. But just by all of you have been chanting Hare Krishna, all of you have seen Krishna deities, despite all that, how many face challenges while sitting in front of the deities and chanting Hare Krishna? Have you experienced any challenges? When all your senses are engaged, then also you're not able to chant. How do you, I don't know, how do somebody can meditate on the formless God, on the name about whose attributes are unknown? You don't know even a single Leela or pastime about that personality. So this is something which is no impossible kind of thing. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, for neophytes, it is compulsory to engage in deity worship. And therefore, last time I had quoted an example. What to speak of neophyte? Śrī Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is a direct manifestation. He's Krishna himself, manifesting himself in the deity, in the form of a devotee, when he had gone to South India. Anyone remembers what was the example I gave? When Śrī Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to South India in context of deity worship. Yes, Yukta, Mother Yukta, go ahead, unmute yourself.
You said he had made deities of Jagannath, Subhadra.
Correct. And Śrī Chaitanya Mahaprabhu worshipped those deities for the Chaturmas period. He had stayed at Srirangam. Like that. So deity worship is very, very important. And this whole idea that the Lord cannot transform matter into spirit is not our philosophy. And not even a factual understanding, because by that, how can the absolute, we cannot say the Lord cannot do. If Lord cannot do something, that thing which he cannot do becomes superior to the Lord. Then how can he be absolute truth? That is a point. So let's move forward to the subject matter ahead. So that was a quick overview of what we were discussing. Now, Nirgun yet Sagun, from there we have to discuss further. That we'll discuss now in a short while. Just want to read. These are the deities worship Lord Chaitanya. This is the purport that we had not read last time. We'll read this. It's a very, very important purport. This is from Prahlad Maharaj prayers. And this is the purport given by Srila Prabhupada on the word of Archana, deity worship. Would anyone like to read it?
Srimad Bhagavatam 7.5.23-24. Archana. After Padasevanam comes the process of Archanam, worship of the deity. If one is interested in the process of Archanam, one must positively take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master and learn the process from him. There are many books for Archana, especially Narad Pancharatra. In this age, the Pancharatra system is particularly recommended for Archana, deity worship. There are two systems of Archana, the Bhagavad system and Pancharatriki system. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, there is no recommendation of Pancharatriki worship, because in this Kali Yuga, even without deity worship, everything can be perfectly performed simply through hearing, chanting, remembering and worship of the lotus feet of the Lord. Prithu Maharaj attained salvation by worshipping the deity of the Lord, Akrura attained salvation by offering prayers, Hanuman by rendering service, Arjuna by establishing friendship with the Lord, and Bali Maharaj by offering everything to the service of the Lord.
Please continue.
All these great devotees served the Lord according to a particular process, but every one of them attained salvation and became eligible to return home back to Godhead. This is explained in Srimad Bhagavatam. It is therefore recommended that initiated devotees follow the principles of Narad Pancharatra by worshipping the deity in the temple. Especially for householder devotees who are opulent in material possessions, the path of deity worship is strongly recommended. An opulent householder devotee who does not engage his hard-earned money in the service of the Lord is called a miser. One should not engage paid brahmanas to worship the deity. If one does not personally worship the deity but engages paid servants instead, he is considered lazy and his worship of the deity is called artificial. An opulent householder can collect luxurious paraphernalia for deity worship, and consequently for householder devotees, the worship of the deity is compulsory. In our Krishna consciousness movement, there are brahmacharis, grahasthas, vanaprasthas and sannyasis, but the deity worship in the temple should be performed specially by the householders. The brahmacharis can go with the sannyasis to preach, and the vanaprasthas should prepare themselves for the next status of renounced life, sannyasa. Grahastha devotees, however, are generally engaged in material activities, and therefore, if they do not take to deity worship, their falling down is positively assured. Deity worship means following the rules and regulations precisely. That will keep one steady in the devotional service. Generally, householders have children, and then the wives of householders should be engaged in caring for the children, just as women acting as teachers care for the children in a nursery school. Grahastha devotees must adopt the Archan Vidhi or deity worship according to the suitable arrangements and directions given by the spiritual master.
There is more to read into it. We'll read it. I just want to make a quick comment here. If you notice in this, of course, a little big purport and also elaboration on this Archanam. Like this, there's a very beautiful purport in the 3rd canto also, and also one in 4th canto. I'm just giving one reference from the 7th canto here. If you notice this, you may, reference is given below. You can read it later on at your leisure. You'll see Prabhupada again says, Grahastha devotees must adopt the Archana Vidhi. And here in the middle of the paragraph, Prabhupada says, Grahastha devotees who are engaged in material activities, if they do not take to deity worship, their falling down is positively assured. So before we read ahead, just want to ask a few questions here to all of you. Many of you have been practicing devotees for a good amount of time, or whatever is the background. Why deity worship is considered so important for one's personal growth in Krishna consciousness? Let's make it this way. What does deity worship teaches us? And how can deity worship? I know Prabhupada, you all might have also heard, Srila Prabhupada had said, our progress in Krishna consciousness is dependent on 99.9% on our... Anyone have heard this statement? Yes, Mother Shriya. What's the completion of the statement?
Chanting.
Yes, chanting. However, Prabhupada here is saying for Grahastha devotees, they must positively engage in Archana Vidhi, deity worship. Any reasons anyone can think of? And here is my request to all of you, for online participants, unless you really have a genuine reason which you should explain to or send a message to the admin, all of you who are part of the Bhakti Shastri batch, they should keep their cameras on. Now, why camera on? It's just because you stay alert to the fact that everyone is watching you. You cannot sleep on the bed and try to listen and things like that. So otherwise, this whole effort of coming together and studying Prabhupada books would not be successful. And for any reason somebody is not able to do because technical reason or some family things which are going on, you should kindly send a message to the admin so they are aware of it. It should not become a practice and only 10-20 of you have the cameras on and rest of you, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Nobody knows where you are. Okay, so deity worship. Any other comments?
Very good.
Yes.
So I think deity worship is the way we are able to connect to Krishna. And when we say that it's our house, obviously we know that we are not a proprietor. So also it reminds us that Krishna is the center of whatever we are doing and whatever we are possessing, and we actually have him as the owner of everything, and we try to connect with him, and we get an opportunity to serve him in our home. And last time you also mentioned there are five types of forms which Lord can take, and it's only the Arch Vigraha through which we can connect to all the other 4 forms.
Yes, thank you, Mother.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavana. So when we have deities at home, we can establish a personal relationship with Krishna Prabhuji. So for example, if a guest comes home, we give a special attention to them. So likewise, when we have deities at home, we'll be conscious throughout the day that we have to serve him.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Yes.
Prabhuji, normally when we are at home, we get distracted. It is a tendency. Going to the temple every time, every day, it's not possible. So when we have the deities at our home, it can remind us every now and then that we have to follow the path of spiritual progress. It is also very, possible to offer our services to God at home.
One last comment, and I'll share my viewpoint. One addition. All of you are saying correct, no doubt about it. Bhagwati Karuna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavana. When we have an Archa Vigraha at home or a deity, we can offer our service to the deity and not be fulfilling our sensual gratifications.
Thank you, thank you.
And we can develop a connection with the Lord.
That looks like a statement coming right from Prabhupada books. Prabhupada would say like that. So thank you for that. So one on the practical level, what it does is this. Just like a householder has a child, and just like the mother and father takes care of the child, feeds the child, dresses the child, bathes the child, and you will see, because the child, I'm not talking about the teenager, I'm talking about the child is totally dependent on the parent, right? The more the child is dependent on the parent, the more parents, shower their love and affection on the child. They are more and more conscious about the needs of the child. Does the mother agree with this? I'm not sure how many fathers would understand this. Poor fellows are always in the office, but probably mothers can, understand this. The more the child is dependent, to that degree, mother showers her affection. Now here, deities, although the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are actually receiving service from you. So, you have to feed them, you have to dress them, you have to garland them, you have to bathe them. And when you have the services going on, so it is just impossible you go to the market to buy something for yourself that you would not bring something for the deities. It is very, very difficult that you go out on the street and you see some very beautiful flowers. You will not remember the deities. Oh, how this beautiful flower would look, so nice if I offer it to the deities. Now you see, although we may not be Madhyamadhikari, we are not yet very much elevated in philosophy or whatnot, but now by serving the deities, we are able to see the connection of the matter with the Supreme Lord. At least not on the level that everything has come from the Lord, but at least we can see that everything can be used in the service of the Lord. Yes or no? And that is why it is said it's very, very important. Of course, cleanliness, punctuality, whatever you all said, that's totally right, no doubt about it. So yes, deity worship. So on that deity worship subject, there are two things. One thing is that Prabhupada said those who have the congregation living next to temple need not have deities at home. Their deities is temple deities. They should go and serve the temple deities. And those who are living far away from the temple, Prabhupada said they can have deities because deity service is important. And those who are Brahmin initiated must necessarily do at least one service to deities every day. According to Brahminical principle like that. That was a point here. So let's move forward. Let's read the last part of the puppet.
Regarding those unable to take to the deity worship in the temple, there is the following statement in the Agni Purana. Any householder devotee circumstantially unable to worship the deity must at least see the deity worship, and in this way he may achieve success also. The special purpose of deity worship is to keep oneself always pure and clean. Grihastha devotees should be actual examples of cleanliness. Deity worship should be continued along with hearing and chanting. Therefore, every mantra is preceded by the word Namaha. In all the mantras, there are specific potencies of which the Grihastha devotees must take advantage. There are many mantras preceded by the word Namaha, but if one chants the holy name of the Lord, he receives the result of chanting Namaha many times. By chanting the holy name of the Lord, one can reach the platform of love of Godhead. One might ask, then what is the necessity of being initiated? The answer is that even though the chanting of the holy name is sufficient to enable one to progress in spiritual life to the standard of love of Godhead, one is nonetheless susceptible to contamination because of possessing a material body. Consequently, special stress is given to the Archana Vidhi. One should therefore regularly take advantage of both the Bhagavata process and the Pancharatriki process. Deity worship has two divisions, namely pure and mixed with fruitive activities. For one who is steady, deity worship is compulsory. Observing the various types of festivals such as Shri Janmashtami, Ramanavami and Narasimha Chaturdashi is also included in the process of deity worship. In other words, it is compulsory for householder devotees to observe these festivals. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So it seems like I'm preparing you for Janmashtami fundraising.
I cannot hear you.
Hare Krishna. It seems like Prabhupada through this purport is preparing you for Janmashtami festival, gearing you up for that Janmashtami upcoming. Last evening we also started our Janmashtami preparations here. So nonetheless, so that was the point. So moving ahead further, we had FAQs that we had discussed last time. Many questions on that we're not going to take it now. And now we come to the last section of this chapter 5, from para number 7, where two words are being spoken about, Nirguna versus Saguna. So we're going to read from the book first, and then we come back to the presentation here. So in your book, this is text 5, 1, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. Can we read from the 5th paragraph? So Sandeep Prabhu, your hand is up, I see that. So please read from the 5th paragraph, which begins with, in the present state of our imperfect material existence.
Okay. In the present state of our imperfect material existence, we cannot see the Supreme Lord on account of our imperfect vision. But still, those devotees who want to see Him by means of material vision are favored by the Lord, who appears in the so-called material form to accept the devotee's service.
So that is the first point, that, why Lord appears. Please go 3-4 lines down. In fact, they are worshipping the Lord. In the same paragraph, Sandeep.
In fact, they are worshipping the Lord, who has agreed to appear before them in a particular way which is approachable by them. This Archa form is not fashioned in terms of the order of the worshipper. It is eternally existent with all its paraphernalia. This can be actually felt by a sincere devotee, but not by an atheist. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that He treats His devotee in proportion to the degree of surrender made by the devotee. He reserves the right not to expose Himself to anyone and everyone except those who surrender unto Him. Therefore, for the surrendered soul, He is always within reach, whereas for the non-surrendered soul, He is far away and cannot be approached. There are two words in the revealed scripture which are important in this connection: Saguna and Nirguna, with qualities and without qualities. Saguna does not mean that the Lord becomes subject to the laws of material nature when He appears. Although He has qualities and appears in the material form, for Him there is no difference between material and spiritual energies, because He is the source of such energies. He is the controller of the different energies, and as such, He cannot at any time be under their influence as we are. The material energy works according to His direction, and therefore He can use the material energy for His purpose, but without ever being influenced by any of the qualities of His energies. Nor for this purpose does He become a formless entity at any time. Ultimately, He is the eternal form, the primal Lord, and the impersonal representation or Brahman effulgence is the glow of his personal rays, as the sun's rays are the glow of the sun god.
Thank you. So, Saguna and Nirguna is being discussed here. So Lord is said to be Nirguna. What is Nirguna means? So how the Mayavadis translate this word means Nirguna. Saguna means full of all qualities, Guna. And they translate Guna as material qualities. So Saguna means filled with all qualities because we have a form. And then Nirguna means without qualities. So they say, see, scripture says Nirguna, Lord has no qualities, which means Lord is formless. But our acharyas explained, when it is said Nirguna, it actually means no material qualities. Just like in Bhagavad Gita, chapter number 4, verse number 9. What does Krishna says? Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tattvataha tyakto deham punarjanma naitima meti swarchana. Janma karma, my birth and my activities are divyam, are transcendental. Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tattvataha. One who knows the truth about the transcendental position of my birth and existence and my activities does not take birth in this world again. So here Prabhupada is further elaborating on the point that Lord, being the controller and the master of both the material and spiritual energy, Lord, as per his wish, can transform the material energy into the spiritual energy. Just like, we prepare bhoga, we offer to the deities and then we call it prasad. What is the meaning of prasad? Prasad means mercy, and it is said to be spiritually transformed. We have many examples where deities, in fact, the deities would honor prasadam. It was Mukunda's son, right? Raghunandan, if I'm correct, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the example comes when Mukunda had gone away, the wife of Mukunda asked her son, Raghunandan, that your father is not here, so please go and make an offering to that Gopinath deity. He went, he was a young boy, went and made an offering to Gopinath deity, and then he went to play. And after the allotted time, he came back, and he was so shocked. He fell at the feet of the deities and began to cry, my dear Lord, you have not eaten anything. My mother and father would chastise me. The whole plate is as it is. He said, I am again ringing my bell, again offering you, please eat it this time. Don't leave anything on the plate. Because my mother asked me to offer it to you. He again chanted the mantra, rang the bell and went away. And he again came back. Oh my dear Lord, what are you doing? What offense have I committed? You are not eating it. And then Lord, being touched by his innocence, the deity, Gopinath, ate the whole plate of prasadam. I mean, not prasadam, bhoga. And now Mukundan, when he saw it, Raghunandan, when he saw it, he was so happy. He brought the empty plate back to his mother. And mother said, where is prasadam? Maya, you said offer to Gopinath. I offered to Gopinath. Gopinath ate all. Mother said, your father had been offering all his life. It never happened. You offered for the first time and Gopinath ate. You rascal, you have become a very naughty boy. Let your father come, we'll chastise you today. And she chastised the son. She couldn't believe that could happen. When the father came, father said, no, our son is a very, very sincere boy. He would not, throw away the prasadam or eat it by himself or feed to the friends. There must be something. So Mukundan said, why don't you, my dear son, offer another plate? And then he offered another plate to the Lord. Long story short, I'm making a summary. And Mukundan hid behind the curtain. And then Raghunandan began to plead, my dear Lord, now my father has come. If you don't eat, he will chastise me. You should eat. And right in front of the eyes of Raghunandan and also Mukunda, who was hiding behind the curtain, he saw Gopinath deity walking down the altar and eating a laddu. And at that time, Mukundan screamed out of ecstasy and he fainted. And then Lord went back, the deity went back and stood. So, the Lord eats. And Brahma Samhita talks about Lord having transcendental senses, which means in our mundane form, we can do one function from our senses. But in case of Krishna, in case of the absolute truth, his senses are transcendental, which means from any sense he can perform any operation. So for him to eat, it does not mean that he has to physically eat. He accepts our offering through his eyes, through his nose as a fragrance, and that's how Krishna honors it. So when it says Saguna and Nirguna, Nirguna means without material qualities. And the other point that Prabhupada mentions here is the Lord is absolute, and as he wishes, he can transform the material energy into the spiritual energy. In the next paragraph, now Prabhupada gives an example of Prahlad Maharaj, where it is said in the third line of the verse, where Isopanisad says, Tadantarasya sarvasya, that you are inside of everything. So to give an example of that, Prabhupada says, quotes a story of Prahlad Maharaj. When you know the story of Prahlad Maharaj, Hiranyakashipu asked, Prahlad, where is your Supreme Lord? Is he everywhere? Is he here? Is he there? Prahlad said, yes, yes, yes. And Hiranyakashipu, is he in the pillar? Prahlad said, yes. And Hiranyakashipu broke the pillar, and there Narasimhadev came out. So Prabhupada says in the next paragraph about this. Now, but there is a difference. Now, because the deity or the Lord came out of the pillar, just like, we worship Mother Yashoda, right? Because she is the mother of Lord Shri Krishna, or let's say Devaki for that reason. Now, because this is a pillar from which Lord Narasimhadev came out. So, what do you all think? Should we worship the pillar? Because pillar from where the Lord came out? Yes or no? Does a pillar, gets that qualification of receiving worship? Because now the pillar is the father or the mother of the Lord. So no. And this is a point in context of where we say Krishna is in everything. The 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, I believe 9th chapter verse number 4. Let me just pull out if it is Vedabase here. 9.4. Krishna says, Maya tatam idam sarvam jagat avyaktam murtinaha mastani sarva bhutani nachaham teshu avastitaha. By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. So it does not mean that every stone slab represents the Lord. As Prabhupada mentioned, the deity form is carved out from as Vedic scriptures talk about, through the due process and the due form. So that is the next paragraph talks about it. And the second point that Prabhupada makes in the next paragraph, maybe we can just quickly read out the paragraph. At least, can we show the paragraph, please? I can give the summary head of what happens in the follow-up paragraphs. And the second point Prabhupada says, first point is this, because the Lord manifested from the pillar doesn't mean pillar needs to be worshipped. Because fact is, Lord is inside of everything and outside of everything. And second thing is, why did Lord appear? Lord is subservient to the will of the devotee. Little up. 2 paragraphs up. This is the paragraph. When the child Saint Prahlad Maharaj. This is the paragraph. Second point, Prabhupada says, the atheist, the Lord Narasimhadev did not appear because Hiranyakashipu ordered Lord to come. Lord appeared because the devotee, just to please the devotee. That is the point. So Prabhupada says, only the devotees of the Lord have access to the Lord. For the atheist, the Lord is very, very far away. Let's come to the last 2 paragraphs and conclude this verse. Please go ahead. Somebody can read out this Brahma Samhita verse which is said here, where Antaryami is being described. Nitai Pran Prabhu, your hand is up. Was it for a question?
No, Prabhu, is for reading.
Oh, okay.
Continue?
Yes, please.
In the Brahma Samhita 5.35, it is said that Govinda, the primeval Lord, enters everything by his plenary portion. He enters the universe as well as all the atoms of the universe. He is outside in his Virat form, and he is within everything as Antaryami. As Antaryami, he witnesses everything that is going on, and he awards us the result of our action as karma pahala. We ourselves may forget what we have done in previous lives, but because the Lord witnesses our actions, the result of our actions are always there, and we have to undergo the reaction nonetheless. The fact is that there is nothing but God within and without. Everything is a manifestation of his different energies, like the heat and light emanating from a fire. And in this way, there is a oneness among his diverse energies. Although there is oneness, however, the Lord in his personal form still enjoys unlimitedly all the pleasures enjoyed minutely by his tiny part and parcel living entities.
Thank you. Let's go back to the presentation once and we conclude the discussion here on this particular verse. So Nirgun and Saguna. So having form or influenced by the modes. So Saguna, many things the Lord is Saguna, which means when Lord appears in this world, he takes a human-like form and he is also affected to karma phal. He is also affected by modes of material nature. No, that is not the point. Next set of paragraphs, paragraph 8 and 9 talked about Lord is inside yet outside of everything. Inside as Antaryami and outside as Virataru, like that. Brahmavadis, they do not know or not attracted to personal Brahman. When it comes to Mayavadis, these are some of the concluding points from the paragraph. Offensive to personal Brahman, which means they are offensive to the personal form of the Lord, as they reject the Lord exists in that way. And these are some of the verses which are talking about how Lord is all pervasive. He's outside of everything and he's inside of everything, particularly 9.4 and 9.5. So to conclude this fifth verse or mantra, the key things that we discuss: the Lord is inconceivable. Contradictory qualities exist. All contradictions are resolved in the Lord. In other words, it is only in the personality as absolute truth where all contradictions can reconcile, because all contradictions originates from his form itself. Deity worship is an opportunity to serve the Lord. And Sagun versus Nirguna was discussed. No, Lord is not Sagun, Lord is Nirgun. Nirgun means no material qualities. And the last point was Lord pervades everything. He's inside of everything as Paramatma or Antaryami, and outside of everything in his Virat Roop. And this is the summary chart. Lord's contradictory qualities, if you see. So what are the contradictions? The contradictions are: he walks, he does not walk, he is far, he is near, within, outside. Who cannot understand the contradictions? Who are atheists, those who think Lord manifests in a material form, those who consider Lord on a ordinary level, and those who have imperfect vision. This is all from purport. Who can understand the contradictions? It depends on our surrender. Ye yathamam prapadyante. And a sincere devotee like Prahlad Maharaj, as Prabhupada quoted in the purport. And why does Lord appear? Lord appears to please them, not to kill the demons. How to understand the contradictions, like he walks, he does not walk? The contradiction means actually shows our inability to understand the fact. And the Supreme Lord, as I said, is a source of contradictions, inconceivable features, because he is the absolute truth. He is far and near. Spiritual world is beyond material sky, and he can be present anywhere in the form of a deity also. He is within and without. He is within and without as Antaryami and Virat form, and through manifestation of his energies. What does a contradiction prove? Contradictions prove the following four things. We have limited power of understanding, can accept our service through any medium, that is deity worshipped. He is both Saguna and Nirguna in that sense, and is source of all energies, like that. So this was a discussion on this particular text 5. If in case today at the end of session we have time, then we can maybe do a little of this exercises. Actually, it was planned that we'll have a group discussion, but it's a little difficult to do it online. So with that, we'll move forward to the next section, text number 6 and 7. For today, however, we'll be only talking about text 6. But before we move forward, what have we established so far? So far we have seen that Lord Ishavasamidam Sarvam. There is an absolute truth who is a controller of everything. And we have also received knowledge about the Lord from text number 4 and text number 5 about his inconceivable nature. And also we have learned that he has a personal form. And also we have also learned about our relationship. He is the absolute controller and we are dependent, or we are his servants. Now, after knowing that Lord exists, about Lord's nature and about our relationship, now text number 6, 7, 8 talks about the vision of that person who have realized the absolute truth and also his relationship with the Supreme Person. So in this text 6, the devotee sees everything and everyone in relation to the Supreme Lord. As we engage in devotional service under the guidance of bona fide spiritual master, we begin to recognize other living entities also as spirit souls or the same spiritual nature as oneself. So when we begin to, it's happening in gradations. First is engaging in devotional service under the guidance of bona fide guru. Then we begin to see every living entity as a spiritual nature like of ourselves. Then what happens next? Gradually our envy and hatred and our desire to enjoy others decreases as we begin to realize that each one of us are eternal, infinitesimal spiritual sparks of the absolute truth. Mamevamsu jivaloka jivabhuta sanatana, who are simply meant to give pleasure to the absolute truth. And a devotee who has reached this stage of understanding is called as Uttama Adhikari. And this is what text 6 talks about it. Let's recite this verse. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmani vanupashyati sarva bhuteshu chatmanam tato na vijugupsate. Yastu sarvani bhutani. Bhutani means all living entity, or living entities. Sarvani means all. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmani evanupashyati. One who sees everything in relation to the absolute truth, who sees every living entity as part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, which means as a spiritual spark. Sarva bhuteshu chatmanam, and one who sees the Supreme Lord within every living entity. Tato na vijugupsate. Only such a person will not hate or cannot hate any other living entity. I'll say that again. Please mark this point. Very, very important point. Only a person who begins to see every living entity as a spiritual spark. The 5th chapter, verse number 18. Vidya vinaya sampanne brahmani kavihasani suni chaiva sapake cha pandita samadarshina. You know what is the true knowledge? To see everything as a part and parcel or with an equal vision. So when we begin to see every living entity as a spiritual spark, one in nature and a part and parcel of the Lord, and we begin to see the Lord within every living entity as Antaryami and Paramatma, in that state of consciousness, such a person will not and cannot hate anything or anything. Prabhupada writes, anything or anything. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his commentary to Īśopaniṣad makes a very beautiful point, and then we'll open up forum for a little bit of discussion on this. He says, hatred and love are opposites. Unless one is devoid of hatred, one cannot attain love. In other words, our love manifests to the degree we have become freed from envy and hatred for others. One who sees everything in relation to Atma cannot have any object of hatred, and such a person easily attains love. In other words, if someone loves God, then such a person cannot hate any living entity. And then the second point, is love exclusive to absolute truth? In other words, we have love in this world also. The mother loves the child loves the parents, the husband, wife, they love each other. That will be the second part of discussion. I'm just opening the discussion on the verse itself. So once again, I'll make a point and let's hear from all of you then. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, hatred and love are opposites to each other. To the degree one has become freed from the hatred, to that degree one develops love for Godhead. In other words, one who loves God cannot hate anything and anyone. What do you understand by this statement? We have so many religious fanatics around us, I mean to say in the world around. And their sustenance of faith is entirely based on the destruction of other faith. Yes or no? Agreed? Their sustenance of faith is entirely based on the destruction of others' faith. To destroy the lives of others is what they consider to be the will of the Lord. But this verse says, no. The moment you begin to love Lord, or in other words, when you understand your relationship with the absolute truth, you begin to see everything as a spiritual spark. You see every living entity. For example, Saint Francis of Assisi, very, very famous example from the Western world. Srila Prabhupada was in Australia, in the church of Saint Francis of Assisi. He was invited there to give an address to the church members. And Prabhupada completed his talk. At the end of the talk, one of the church members, means the church congregation, asked Srila Prabhupada, what is your understanding about Saint Francis of Assisi? Prabhupada apparently had not heard about him or not read about him. Prabhupada asked, whenever somebody would ask about anyone like this, Prabhupada would say, what is a philosophy? Prabhupada said, what was his philosophy? And that man said, Saint Francis of Assisi said, brother, sun, sister, moon. Which means he considered every living entity as his brother and sister. So the devotee who was sitting right at the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada on the ground, he was narrating this past, and he said, as soon as that church congregation said, Saint Francis of Assisi believed brother, sun, sister, moon, which means every living entity is my brother and sister, Srila Prabhupada had tears roll down from his eyes. And Srila Prabhupada replied, oh, he was a pure devotee of the Lord. Would anyone like to give a purport to it? Prabhupada replied, oh, he was a pure devotee of the Lord. And what was the thing said about Saint Francis of Assisi? That he believed every living entity as his brother and sister. And what did Prabhupada reply? Oh, he was a pure devotee of the Lord. And we are discussing something like this about it. Or that Uttamadhikari, the one who does not hate any living entity, anyone or anything. Many times the question I asked, at least over the last decade, since I've been doing this kind of an outreach engagements, many times, at least within this subcontinent, people ask, Prabhuji, there are so many people practicing religion. My sas sasur or my parents, my grandparents, they practiced religion all through their life. But we never saw any transformation in them. They still used to talk about nonsensical things about others. They used to do backbiting. They used to find faults. They used to talk about money matters. They used to do all this kind of a thing. They may not do gross sinful activities, but the sense of hatred and envy was there. Just like in 5th verse of Upadeshamrita, Srila Rupa Goswami says, Krishneti yas giritam manasadriyeta dikshasti chit pranitibhischa bhajantamisham. So Shri, one second. It's been a long time since I recited the shloka. One quick second. Very beautiful verse. I'll just pull out. Yes. Krishneti yasya giritam manasadriyeta dikshasti chit pranitibhischa bhajantamisham susrushya bhajana vijnanam ananyamanya nindadishunya hiddam ipsita sangalabdha. So this is a verse which we're going to talk whenever we discuss Upadeshamrita. We'll talk about 3 levels of devotees. And here Srila Rupa Goswami says, Ipsita Sangalabdha, you should aspire, Ipsita, desire, Sangalabdha, you should aspire to take an association of such person. Who is that person he's describing as? Nindadishunya hirdam, whose heart has become entirely freed of finding faults in others. Nindadi Shunya Hridam, we should aspire to take association of such devotee more and more, which is actually a definition of Uttamadhikari. So that is what is being discussed in text 6 of Isopanisad. Tatona vijugupsate. Such a person does not hate anyone. In other words, true religion, the key point that I wanted to bring it out categorically for all of you is, true religion teaches us love. True religion never teaches hatred for any living entity. What to speak about human beings? Not even for animals. There cannot be meaning to dharma if dharma teaches that one sect of people to be given protection and other sect of people to be killed on the basis of faith. That is not the meaning of it. And unfortunately, all the conflict in the world today is because of misguided and misunderstood definition of religion, where people are fighting on the basis of their misconceived and perceived sense of identity, where they claim that my Lord is the supremost. And why they claim that my Lord is only the Lord? Because I believe in him. Better he be the absolute. Because if he, what I believe in absolute means I am also greater than, isn't it? So ultimately, by saying that my God is the actual God, such people are actually only trying to justify their own sense of false ego. That is the point. So here is my question. I kind of gave an answer to it already. How a true practitioner cannot hate any living entity. Any examples you can think of from the history where such behavior was exhibited, where the person did not hate. Even he did not hate the one who was punishing him. What to speak of one who loved him? Yes, Jai Joshi. Jai Prabhu. One example.
Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad Maharaj past time Guru. Prahlad Maharaj didn't take offense, he didn't consider his father's atrocities and asked to Narasimhadev to liberate him also, after the episode was over.
What an example. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu loved the pastime of Dhruva Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj. A young child, he did not had developed any envy for his father, towards his father, or the hatred, where he had all the reasons to do so because his father had attempted to kill him numerous times. Yet Prahlad Maharaj, at the end, when Narasimhadev pleaded to Prahlad, ask for some boon, ask for some boon. And then Prahlad Maharaj said, okay, my dear Lord, if that's what you desire, as a service to you, to please you, please set my father free from all the karmic reactions because of his sinful activities. Ramesh Prabhu, what's another example? Yes.
The other example is in the Srimad Bhagavatam about Jadabharat Maharaj.
And King Rahugana.
Offered to Kali Mata and
okay. Okay.
And he was just he didn't even actually hesitate anything, and he was ready to get the offer.
Okay, I would say more precise would be Jad Bharat and Rahugana. Because in fact, Jad Bharat showed his compassion to Rahugana, where Rahugana had really insulted him. In case of those Kali worshippers, Jad Bharat had no opportunity to show compassion because Mother Kali finished off the job before Jad Bharat could do anything, So great. Okay, thank you. Any other example? Who has not spoken so far? Sudhir Prabhu. Yes, please.
Ambarish Maharaj and Durvasa Muni.
Perfect. Wonderful. Ambarish Maharaj and Durvasa Muni. Anything else?
Pratu Maharaj and
Indra. Well, okay. But in that case, Lord Vishnu had to interfere. And he had asked Pratu Maharaj to forgive Indra. I mean, I'm not saying that Pratu had a hatred for Indra. That's not the point. But here, this example of Pratu Maharaj is in a different context. This example generally comes in the case of conflict resolution. So, Mother Manju?
Draupadi forgiving Ashwatthama.
Okay. Okay, good one. Prabhupada says, Prabhupada doesn't bring out this point. Of course, that is true because she was a pure devotee, so she had the sense of compassion. Prabhupada says, because of being a female, because of feminine nature, they're generally more kind. Prabhupada brings that concept of kind. And Prabhupada says, because she had lost her son, so she could empathize with the suffering of the mother of Ashwatthama who had already lost her husband. So like that Prabhupada, but yes, correct. Mother Draupadi, yes. One last one who has not shared until now. Okay, Nitai Pran Prabhu, go ahead.
Prabhu, this is an example from this yuga when Haridas Thakur was beaten in 22 markets.
I was waiting for it all this while. That's the reason I was giving you chances. Okay, say something, we said. Yes, and also don't forget Jesus Christ also. Prabhupada glorified that, So correct, Haridas Thakur, Jesus Christ, etc. And there are many examples can be quoted, even from the life of Srila Prabhupada also personally like that. So that is the key gist of it. And before we get into the discussion, maybe we can take a break and then we come back. But you got the key point. The one who is practicing a true religion will gradually become free from the hatred to other living entities, which including his own family, friends, and everyone. And to the degree one becomes freed from envy and hatred, to that degree he develops love of Godhead. So let's reverse this whole equation. To say how much love of Godhead we have developed, we can say how much freed we have become of hatred and envy of others. To that degree, it happens. And this is what this subject matter focuses. Just to make one or two more comments before we take into a break here. Where is this? So, what we're going to see in the purport, I'll just give you that, a summary of the purport here. So, 6 to 8 talks about vision of Mahabhagavat. That's a point. It's a short purport here. Is one of the short purport of Isopanisad, where Prabhupada says there are 3 factors are mentioned in the verse that leads to tato na vijugupsute, which means that makes a person free from hatred. What are the 3 factors makes a person free from hatred? The very first factor is, which I mentioned in the first 3 lines. First, that person sees everything in relation to the Supreme Lord. That is the first point. Second thing, he sees all living entities as part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. And third thing, he sees the Supreme Lord within everything. First, in relation with the Lord, he sees everything as a part and parcel of the Lord, and he sees the Lord within everything. And this is the vision of a Mahabhagavat which sets him free from any kind of hatred. This is the first subject matter which is discussed, wherein Prabhupada is going to talk about types of devotees, Kanashta, Madhyama, Uttamadhikari, in paragraph number 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. And then Prabhupada talks about imitators, warns us about imitators, that how in our Krishna Kant we should not imitate, and also, we should practice according to our level. The Bhakti we should practice according to our level, and says we should be careful of it. And finally talks about how do we develop this realization of seeing Krishna everywhere, or seeing everything in relation to Krishna? That is the last section of this purport. This consciousness gets only developed by hearing about the Lord, by hearing about the devotees. And that is the subject matter of this verse and the purport. So there are only 7 paragraphs. First, second, third talks about 3 types. And from the 4th paragraph to 7th paragraph, discussion is about false versus real, oneness, and imitation we discussed. So with that, we'll pause here. Is 1:30. So before we start with the discussion on this verse, is there any question on what we have discussed in the text 5?
Hare Krishna, can you hear me now?
Yes, Mother.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu, there is a question, there's a doubt. We are saying that true religion teaches us love. What should be our response when there is hatred from the other end?
Okay. Well, I mean, it has to be seen in a context. Is it a hatred towards a community? It is a hatred towards self. As a principle about the Vaishnava Dharma that scripture teaches, as a devotee, one is tolerant when something happens to oneself. But, Nectar of Instruction talks about it in the purport writes, Vacho Vegam Manasa Krodha Vegam. There, the principle of Krodha is discussed. Prabhupada says, just like Hanumanji had utilized Krodha, Arjuna had utilized Krodha, to destroy the enemies who were bent on destroying the Dharma. In case of Hanumanji, the Ravana had actually kidnapped Mother Sita. He had blasphemed the Lord. In case of Arjuna, there was an offenses committed towards devotees like Yudhishthira Maharaj, Mother Draupadi, like that. So Prabhupada writes in I believe it is the second last paragraph of text 1 purport, the Prabhupada says, just like Haridas Thakur, for his personal self, he tolerated, the offenses that were committed towards him, which was a symptom of a hatred of one religion towards other. However, the same feeling of anger can be exercised when we see a devotee being offended, the Lord being offended, or else if we don't, then we should walk away from that place. So again, it's a very circumstantial and a situational thing that you have to see in what situation you are, and you have to get bothered about it. For example, in today's context, the news media, social media, etc., there is a widespread hatred or an effort to create an hatred of one religion toward another religion. So for that, we don't have to get so much caught up by, we cannot get carried away by that. Just like Srila Prabhupada, as Abhay Charande had went and met Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur in 1922, and when Bhakti Siddhanta told him, you should preach, Abhay Charande, what is the use of preaching when we are already under the subjugation of a foreign power? And then Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, this all political things, they will keep on changing, but Krishna consciousness is so important that it cannot wait for any of the temporary situations around. And like this, there are 2-3 references in the Srimad Bhagavatam where Prabhupada talks about this. If you look at historically, Britishers was also very agnostic, very hostile towards Vedic Dharma. In fact, they were the one who had caused the greatest damage to Vedic culture by vehemently opposing the Gurukul education, inventing a story of Sati Pratha, creating a divide between Hindus and Muslims on basis of caste and a lot of things. So they really did a lot of things to cause damage to our Dharma. Yet Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, Krishna consciousness is so important that it cannot wait for anything. Other factor is karma is always there. Karma plays its part. According to what we have done in the past, we're going to get the karmic reaction. So as a principle, what I understand on this subject matter, is to the time or to the degree we can ignore it and keep moving forward doing the Krishna conscious activities, that is in best interest. At least I don't think so any one of us in India or from the places where you are, any one of you faces any kind of a challenge from the government or the locality where you're living in. None of us are living under communist regime where they do not allow you to congregate, they don't allow you to practice your religion. So nobody is exhibiting such degree of hatred towards us. So as I said, your question was very generic. It depends entirely on a situation where a person is and what kind of response has to be given. Of course, Krishna is the same Supreme Personality of God. I told Arjuna to fight, and similarly, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur told Srila Prabhupada, forget it. Krishna conscience is so important. So Krishna could have told Arjuna, forget the fight. You becoming Krishna conscious is very important. Go back to the forest and take sannyas. So it's a situational thing. I hope this is making some point. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Prabhu, what you quoted is mostly about the outside world, but now we have having conflicts in the house itself. So how do we really, because as a mother, we've been in a joint family, and now we can see a very high rising conflicts in husbands and wives. And that time, how do we really deal it? Like the husband, we are Dikshitas still. There is situations wherein we can't see God in the moment we are angry, We are not able to control our senses and cannot become that highly Krishna conscious.
Well, this question is a little different from the previous question because in our relationships, we don't hate each other. That whatever conflict is there because of familiarity breeds contempt, as they say. So it's because of that. And of course, conflicts are always going to be there. Frankly speaking, I have not seen a couple who does not fight. It is unavoidable. Just the other day in the morning, I was reflecting when I was coming to Hinjawadi. I was just thinking that how brilliant our culture was. If you look at it, another logic for the Varnashram Dharma, particularly on the aspect of the Dharma side, ashram side, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha. Vanaprastha is so essential. Now in Vanaprastha, there are three, four stages. One stage is, now the husband-wife kind of withdraws themselves from the family affairs and also in their personal dealings. They're kind of keeping it to the minimum as a service to each other. Next stage could be that they leave the house, go to the forest. And the third stage could be the husband takes to sannyas and leaves the wife under the care of an elder son, like that. So if you see, after 50 years, our culture taught withdrawal from the active family life. I believe most of the conflict happens today because nobody wants to withdraw from the active family life. Everyone wants to continue in the family life. That is the whole thing. If any of the partner actually is in the withdrawal mode, then the conflict would not happen. And the reason of the conflict is because everyone wants to be the center of attraction, which means my things should be heard. My suggestions should be followed. What I say has to be practiced. And that's the reason why conflicts continue. And that's the reason today's day and time, it is almost close to impossible that a young couple, married couple, can stay with the parents. Where none of the parents are in the withdrawal mode. And the father or the mother, they keep giving their advices. Of course, they are mature, that they have the right. But another principle, Vedic principle is, unless you have been asked for an advice, you should not give an advice. That's the thing. Prabhupada writes in Bhagavad Gita in one of the purport, a teacher only has a right to correct his students. This is in context of devotee life. So if a teacher, which means a Shiksha Guru or whatever, if he corrects a devotee who does not accept him or her as a teacher, then you're committing Vaishnava Aparadha. So, I mean, it's a tricky thing. You cannot even chastise freely. You have to be ensure that you have to be super sure that the student really accepts you as a teacher. Then only your chastisement will not be part of Vaishnava Aparadh. Otherwise, you would be thinking that I am doing Vaishnava compassion by offering him chastisement. And that student might be taking it as an offense because he doesn't take you as a teacher. So these are some of the aspects of etiquettes and the logic that needs to be considered. So that's the point. If Krishna factor is added, then it's a different thing. Then the situation changes entirely. But yet, even for that, yet there is a Vanaprastha ashram, there is a Sannyasa ashram. And that is not only for brahmacharis. The grihasthas also go to Vanaprastha and Sannyasa ashram. So at some stage, we have to withdraw. That is always there. So, I mean, that's okay. That's part of life. So, whatever is happening with us right now, know for sure is our karmic reaction. So, somebody is getting a karmic reaction of all that fighting, troubles and shouting, maybe in the brahmachari life or maybe in the grihastha life because of the partner. Similarly, a brahmachari would get to hear that or will receive that karmic reaction from another brahmachari, maybe his room partner. That reaction nonetheless would come. It doesn't matter where you are in the ashram. That will anyways happen.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. So, Prabhuji, mine is a personal question actually. Because, if 99% of the things are very well, if there's one fault, that is what strikes me, whether it's a presentation or whether it is anything, So I just wanted to share this. I asked my Guru Maharaj, So I have this tendency that when I look at something, whatever is wrong, that actually strikes my eye. So when I asked my Guru Maharaj, maybe that's the reason he's engaging me in proofreading, because I always, find out what are the mistakes in transcription. But he told me this, that, I asked Guru Maharaj that, if I find something is not correct and it is in the service of the Lord, so is it, I don't have any role to play in the entire scene, right? I'm just a spectator, but I find that something is wrong. That's what strikes my eye. So I asked Guru Maharaj, is it correct to stay quiet? Because I'm in no position of authority. So what should I do? So my Guru Maharaj told me that, what you can do is you can ask a question, you should not correct, but you can ask a question, it's being done like this, is it the right way? Like that. My Guru Maharaj told me, you ask a question, don't give a statement. So I was just thinking of that because fault finding, I don't know if it's coming through my so many years, that's the condition that I'm in, that even if 99% of things are working well and 1% is wrong, that is what strikes me. Is that because of the previous, impressions from the previous life, Prabhuji?
So whatever our current state of consciousness is all because of what we have done in the past lives and how we have trained ourselves in this life, the kind of choices that we have made. For example, this particular nature, the more we would do it, the more it becomes as a habit. So much so that later on you will begin to do it even unconsciously. Even you would have done it, you would not have realized that you have done it. You have spoken about it like that. Hare Krishna. So yeah, that's the thing about this, like that. It's very difficult actually to change our conditionings. We can give up on sinful activities. We can change our dress, we can change our hairstyle, we can put on tilak, we can put on kantimala. External changes are very easy to do. Particularly when it comes to internal transformation, that is very hard. That requires a very, very sincere effort. And the worst thing with it, there is something called as relapse. If you have consciously made an effort, you may be able to do it for some time. But the moment we become proud, thinking that I have succeeded, then happens a relapse, where it, literally Krishna withdraws all his mercy, because of which the strength we were able to, transcend that particular nature or conditioning of ours. And then because we have maybe become proud, for example, just generally I'm asking, in case, imagine if you have done a Nirjala Ekadashi, I'm not saying you feel it like this, Imagine you have done Nirjala Ekadashi, whereas everyone else is having nice, Ekadashi feast, but you have done Nirjala Ekadashi. How many would think your mind would feel a sense of superiority? See how great renunciate I am, that I am able to follow Nirjala Ekadashi, and look at the sense gratifiers. They're eating feast on the day of Ekadashi. This will come naturally. Of course, the mind is like this, it will come naturally fine. But the moment you act on that and you pass a comment on it, which means you have acted on it, now the mercy will be withdrawn. And when the mercy is withdrawn, then the relapse happens. And it is a very difficult stage actually, when the relapse begins to happen. Because what happened when the relapse is happening, by that time you might have become so-called senior devotee. So earlier when we were making faults, we were new people, we were able to take guidance. Now when the relapse happened, we have become a senior devotee in the eyes of the community. Now for a senior devotee to take guidance becomes a huge ego issue. Are you getting the point? And then that person doesn't know what to do, how to deal with it. Then there is another greater struggle comes, because we can only get rid of this lower nature of ours by the mercy of the Vaishnavas. Of course, mercy of Guru and Vaishnava. And if you're not able to take their guidance later on, then it's very difficult to give it up. So what I can say with my own life of struggle, because struggle is always a part of life as a sadhaka, that keep endeavoring for the right consciousness and keep attempting to act on that platform. So it is not only important to know scriptures, it is also important to practice by those scriptures. So once in a while, it will be a good exercise to ask oneself, the way I behave, is it something which is kind of prescribed in the scriptures for a Vaishnava to behave? Once in a while, we can ask ourselves, many things we'll get to know that way. Our actions, our behaviors, our speech, is it right or not? And second thing, which His Holiness Bhakti Swami Maharaj used to say, is the way I behave now, or what I speak now, would my spiritual master be pleased if he gets to know of it, about my action or behavior? So these 2-3 things can help us to deal with it. And of course, Krishna consciousness, the process itself is all purifying. The chanting process, the archanam, and all the process of Krishna consciousness, it is not only purifying our, the behaviors and the tendencies, but it's also eradicating the deep-rooted desire. And any spiritualist connected with Krishna consciousness, let's say for a few months to few years, can very easily say our desires have changed a lot. Do you all agree with that? As much as we continue to practice Krishna consciousness, our desires have changed a lot, and it continues to go on. And I'll conclude this with one last point. There was a young boy, a 17-year-old boy, who had recently means that during Prabhupada time, had joined the temple, and he was a little shy to speak to Prabhupada, but he desperately wanted to talk to Prabhupada. So Prabhupada was there in that particular temple for 3 days, and after the 3rd day, when Prabhupada began to leave, and this time he thought, I will go in front of Prabhupada and I'll ask my question. I'll get the answer to my question. So for the previous occasions, when Prabhupada saw this young boy, Prabhupada spoke to him. So now he thought, I'll go and stand in front of the Prabhupada, and Prabhupada will see me, Prabhupada will talk to me, and I'll ask my question. This time when he went and stood in the aisle and Prabhupada is walking by, Prabhupada didn't even look at him. So he didn't had an opportunity to ask. He offered his obeisances. When he got up, he saw Prabhupada has already has reached his car, and now Prabhupada is entering the car. Prabhupada have entered the car, the engine has started, and the car is about to leave, and he doesn't know when he'll get to see Prabhupada again. Oh no, how can I miss the chance to ask this question? So he ran with all his might and knocked on the window of Prabhupada, and he said, Prabhupada, I have one question to ask you. Prabhupada said, yes. Prabhupada, what can I do to fully dedicate myself to Krishna consciousness? How can I surrender myself fully to Krishna consciousness? Prabhupada said, desire. He closed the window and the car went off. Not that Prabhupada was getting late to catch a train or the flight, so he didn't say an elaborate answer. Bhagavad Gita actually teaches us it's all the game of our desire. 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita talks about it. We'll discuss when we discuss, but it's all about desire, what we desire. So it's good to do a self-inventory once in a while. What am I desiring? Na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim. Kavitama jagdish kamaye. Mama janmani janmani ishware. Bhavatad bhaktir ahitukit vai. Is my desire getting aligned to this statement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Guru mukha padma vakya arana korhiyo mane asha. Are my desires getting aligned to the statement of Guru Vandana that we sing every morning? So like that, there are many, many statements. So we have to see how or where our desires are aiming at. All right. So, okay, we have 1 or 2 more questions. Madhuri Priya Mataji.
क्वेश्चन तो हिंदी में सब प्रभु जी हिंदी में पूछ सकते हैं ना?
हाँ जी माता जी.
प्रभु जी बहुत सारे ऐसे इशू आते हैं कि गृहस्थ में रह के भक्ति कैसे किया जा सकता है प्रभु जी? गृहस्थ में क्या है कि बहुत सारी जगह ऐसे इशू आते हैं, बोलते हैं कि सारा दिन बुक लेके आप बैठे रहते हैं, आप कुछ इन्वायरमेंट नहीं है, कुछ नहीं है प्रभु जी, तो दोनों को कैसे मैनेज करके चला जाएगा प्रभु जी?
Actually, in this regard, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur also quoted, Bhakti is not dependent on any material factor. भक्ति जो है वो सभी प्रकार के भौतिक उससे मुक्त है. और आपके इस प्रश्न से पहले उसी प्रकार एक मैंने जवाब दिया था. तो जो भक्त प्रभुपाद से पूछते हैं मैं भक्ति के में कैसे आगे बढ़ सकता हूँ, मैं कैसे तीव्र प्रकार की भक्ति कर सकता हूँ, प्रभुपाद ने कहा डिजायर. अब डिजायर कैसे लानी है, उसके लिए भक्त संग, जो भक्त भक्ति में बहुत निपुण हैं, भक्ति में बहुत तीव्र हैं, भक्ति में आगे प्रगति करना चाहते हैं खुद, अगर ऐसे भक्तों का संग करेंगे तो वही इच्छा हमारे अंदर आएगी. आई रिमेंबर ऑलमोस्ट 10-20 years ago, शिला वन डिवोटी बॉम्बे में ही रहते थे वो, उन्होंने हिज होलीनेस राधानाथ महाराज से संडे फिश क्लास के बाद एक क्वेश्चन पूछा था. एंड दैट आंसर इज काइंड ऑफ एनक्रेव्ड इन माय कॉन्शियसनेस. तो जो भक्त था बॉम्बे में क्या है, बॉम्बे इज क्वाइट पॉपुलेटेड सिटी एंड वेरी एक्सपेंसिव. तो उसका छोटा सा घर था, मेरे ख्याल से 1 room अपार्टमेंट. वहाँ पे इस वक्त लाइक अ जॉइंट फैमिली स्टेइंग लिटरली, जहाँ पे उसके मम्मी पापा बहन सब रहते थे. और उस बेचारे लड़के के अलावा कोई भक्ति नहीं करता था. तो आप आप सोचिए अगर आपका टीवी चल रहा हो तो आप कैसे कुछ कर पाओगे. तो ही सेड टू महाराज मैं चैंटिंग नहीं कर पाता, इतना डिस्टर्बेंस है, वो है. सो महाराज सेड व्हाट डिस्टर्बेंस? He said, I don't get any private time with Krishna. There are so much disturbances. So then Maharaj said, no, that is not correct. Chanting is your private time with Krishna. You have chosen to get distracted with what is happening outside of you. अगर वैसे देखा जाए तो जिस समाज में हम रहते हैं तो वहां तो ऑलरेडी कितने प्रकार के डिस्टर्बेंस चल रहे हैं. डिस्टर्बेंस तो हर प्रकार के चल रहे हैं. There are so many troubles which are going around. प्रश्न ये क्या हम उन डिस्टर्बेंसेस से डिस्टर्ब होना चाहते हैं? नहीं. इसीलिए आई लव दिस वर्स ऑफ भगवद गीता, बिकॉज कहीं ना कहीं हमारी भक्ति के लिए सबसे महत्वपूर्ण अगर वर्स कहूँ तो मैं यही है, एटलीस्ट हमारी स्टेज पे, वो है भगवद गीता का 2 अध्याय का वन ऑफ द स्टार्टिंग इंस्ट्रक्शन ऑफ लॉर्ड श्री कृष्ण. वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग. आई लव दिस कॉन्सेप्ट. भगवान श्री कृष्ण भगवद गीता की जब शुरुआत करते हैं तो उसमें सबसे पहली इंस्ट्रक्शन अर्जुन को देते हैं, मात स्पर्शास्तु कौन्तेय शीतोष्ण सुख दुखदा आगमा पाइनो नित्यास्ताम तितिक्ष्व भारत. सारांश में अर्जुन आपको टॉलरेट करना सीखना पड़ेगा. उसके बाद भगवान श्री कृष्ण अपनी शिक्षाओं का वर्णन करना शुरू करते हैं. So what I have learned with my lifespan in this world, whoever we are, we have to cultivate tolerance. Cultivating tolerance का मतलब क्या है? Do not get disturbed. You know, do not get disturbed by little things that happen. Srila Prabhupada was flying in a flight. You know, those days in 1970s, उस समय you can smoke in the flight. तभी तो आप flight में जाते हो तो you cannot smoke. But those days it was allowed. So some people were smoking. So Prabhupada के जो personal assistant या servant थे, वो बहुत disturb होने लगे उससे. So Prabhupada turned to him, he said, "Can't you tolerate this much? Why are you getting disturbed?" And then the disciple became quiet. And Prabhupada continued chanting. So we have no other alternative. And if you look at the lives of any of our acharyas, how much they tolerated all kinds of inconveniences. आप में से शायद किसी को पता भी नहीं होगा, ये प्रभुपाद लीलामृत में नहीं है लिखा हुआ. हम जानते हैं, हमने सुना है जब प्रभुपाद वृंदावन में गए थे तो राधा दामोदर मंदिर में रुके थे. उससे पहले वंशीवट में रुके थे. तो कोई जानता है वंशीवट से पहले 1 साल प्रभुपाद कहाँ रुके थे? बिफोर, उससे पहले शिला प्रभुपाद 1 साल के लिए केशीघाट, आई एम सॉरी, यस, नॉट केशी. Prabhupada, for 1 year, when he moved to Vrindavan for the first time, Prabhupada was living for 1 whole year at Keshi-Ghat. Even if you go to Keshi-Ghat today, I was recently in Vrindavan, so you see at Keshi-Ghat, there are small holes which are there in the walls. So Srila Prabhupada was living in those holes for 1 year, and Prabhupada got malaria thrice there, 3 times in a year. The doctor who treated Prabhupada in 1977 was his doctor then also. And it was he who pleaded Srila Prabhupada, ki Swamiji, why are you staying like this? And Srila Prabhupada said, this is what Krishna have arranged for me. So I have to accept it. It was he who found out an accommodation for Prabhupada at Vamsivat. Then Srila Prabhupada shifted to Vamsivat, and then from later on from that Vamsivat, Prabhupada shifted to Radha Damodar temple. For 1 whole year, Prabhupada stayed in that hole. You can go and see those places still there. You know, other Babajis lived there, like that. So, tolerance is something that we need to all cultivate. Hare Krishna. Okay, we'll take 1 or 2 more questions. Yes, Jai Prabhu.
So, Prabhuji, you were describing in past few questions about desire. So, but he came to Krishna consciousness, or for example, if I remember how I came, then we had that desire, we had that attraction to some extent, and like to the Indian scriptures or whatever, and then we got attracted. So that desire got us here. Now, how will we increase the desire? Like, isn't associating with devotees and everything, there is a way to increase the desire, is fine, but that is forceful, right? No one forced us initially. It was out of desire. Now we are saying we do something mechanical to increase that desire. That is artificial, like, or that is forceful, is what I feel. Desire
So,
on its own effort. Right?
Srila Rupa Goswami explains the process of progress in Krishna consciousness. He says, Adau Shraddha Sadhu Sangha Bhajana Kriya Anartha Nivrati Syat. And the process continues. Adau Shraddha, there is some faith is required in the beginning. Some faith. That faith could be in Bhagavad Gita. That faith could be there that this is a ISKCON temple. There is a Radha Krishna deity. I should go and take darshan. There could be a faith in a devotee who is your friend, and he invites you to come to a temple. So that could be anything by which, with that initial faith, you come in the association of the devotee, not necessarily your desire. It is a faith, adhau shraddha. That faith, initial faith, which could be on your friend who is a devotee, which could be on the Hindu temples. So you think ISKCON is a Hindu temple, I should go and take darshan of Radha Krishna. That faith could be on Bhagavad Gita. It could be on anything, not necessarily desire. I mean, how many of us can genuinely say here that we had a desire to practice spiritual life? Because the kind of education we have come through, I'm not denying that you all are very dharmic and religious people, but the kind of education we have got through had trained us to cultivate desires for more and more material accomplishments. So from where we can get the desire to have a spiritual life? So adho shraddha ta sadhu. So that initial faith brings us in the association of sadhus. Then in their association of sadhu, which could be just one interaction, which could be multiple interactions, your faith gets cultivated more. And when a faith comes to a certain level or certain stage, adho shraddha ta sadhu sangha, with a continuous association of sadhu, then you come to the stage of accepting a guru, that is called as bhajana kriya. Then where at that stage of bhajana kriya, where you accepted guru, which does not necessarily mean guru means your guru that you want to take initiation. That could be accepting Srila Prabhupada as Shiksha Guru and following 16 rounds, following 4 regulative principles, which means now you agree to engage in devotional service. That is how the whole process happens. And this process continues along with Anartha Nivritti. It's not that after Bhajana Kriya Anartha Nivritti starts. Anartha Nivritti happens the time you begin to interact with devotees or any of the paraphernalia. That continues on. So which means Sadhu Sangha and Bhajana Kriya has to continue on. That is what we're going to give us the right set of desires, and that is how we're going to progress. All right? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, we'll do one thing. For this purpose, we'll read out from Chaitanya Charitamrita some set of verses which talks about the qualities of Kanishta, Madhyama, Uttama. And then with the given time frame that we have, I will give you the summary of it.
Yes, Prabhu.
Shraddhavan Jan hai Bhakti Adhikari, Uttama Madhyama Kanishta Shraddhanusari. Nitai Prabhu, you can read the translations.
Sorry, Prabhu. A faithful devotee is truly eligible candidate for the loving service of the Lord. According to one's faith, one is classified as a topmost devotee, an intermediate devotee, or an inferior devotee.
So here, one of the parameters to classify Kanishta, Madhyama, Uttama is based on the faith that one carries. That is the point being described here. Let's go to text number 65. Shastra yukte sunipuna dhrada shraddha yanra uttama adhikari se tare samsara. Translation.
One who is expert in logic, argument, and the revealed scripture, and who has firm faith in Krishna, is classified as a topmost devotee. He can deliver the whole world.
So one who has firm faith, who is completely learned in the concept of Krishna consciousness and the logic, one who can easily, in other words, who cannot be logically defeated, who can present Vedic scriptures in its entirety and, present Krishna consciousness to be the topmost. That is an Uttamadhikari here described. Text number 66. Shastra yukta cha nipunaha sarvatha dhrada nishaya praudha shraddho adhikariya sa bhaktau uttamo mataha. Translation.
One who is expert in logic and in understanding the revealed scripture, and who always has firm conviction and deep faith that is not blind, is said to be considered a topmost devotee in devotional service.
So what is happening here is, here Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is making a statement and then he's giving an evidences from scripture. So this is an evidence from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Like that is going on, which looks like a repetition of what we just read. That's the background. Now in 67, again he makes a statement. Shastra yukti nahi jane dhrada shuddhavana madhyama adhikari se mahabhagyavan. After describing Uttamadhikari, now Krishnadas Kaviraj talks about Madhyamadhikari. What is Madhyamadhikari? Please read.
One who is not very expert in argument and logic based on the revealed scripture, but who has firm faith, is considered a second-class devotee. he also must be considered most fortunate.
So, second Madhyamadikari devotee is one whose faith is fixed. You know, he cannot be discouraged from his Krishna conscious practice. He is firm. However, when it comes to logic and arguments, he may or may not necessarily be able to present always in its right context. In other words, if there is an argument, there's a debate, then he may or may not necessarily be able to defend Krishna consciousness. So right now he does not have complete knowledge. Yet his faith is fixed. It is not that knowledge is lacking. He's not lacking knowledge. But it is in comparison to Uttamadikari, who cannot be defeated in argument about Krishna consciousness. Like that. Text number 68. Translation.
He who does not know spiritual argument very well, but who has firm faith, is called an intermediate or second-class devotee.
Text number 69. Jahara komala shraddha sei kanishta jana krame krame teno bhakta ahibe uttama. Translation.
One whose faith is soft and pliable is called a neophyte, but by gradually following the process, he will rise to the platform of first-class devotee.
So this is Kanishtadikari, which means a Madhyamadikari, if he has to go and share the message of Krishna consciousness, because his faith is fixed, nobody can discourage him from practicing Krishna consciousness. Nobody can change his faith. Now the point with Kanishtadikari is his faith is also very weak. Knowledge, so he does not have. His faith is also weak. Now, if he attempts to preach, then the results could be other way around, which means he might get preached and he might join the other party. You know, that is a potential with a Kanishtadikari. That's the point here. And this is the reference from Nectar Devotion. Please read.
One whose faith is not very strong, who is just beginning, should be considered a neophyte devotee.
Text number 71. Rati prema tara tumay bhakta taharatama ekadasha skandhe tara kariyache lakshana. Now, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is going to give lakshan right now based on Nectar Devotion. Now he's going to give lakshan or symptoms based on Srimad Bhagavatam 11th canto, where the symptoms of Kanishta, Madhyama, Uttamadikari are represented. Please go ahead.
A devotee is considered superlative or superior according to his attachment and love. In the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the following symptoms have been given.
Please read the purport.
Shri Bhakti Vinod Thakur has stated that if one has developed faith in Krishna consciousness, he is to be considered an eligible candidate for further advancement in Krishna consciousness. Those who have faith are divided into three categories: Uttam, Madhyam and Kanishta, first class, second class and neophyte. A first class devotee has firm conviction in the revealed scripture and is expert in arguing according to the Shastras. He is firmly convinced of science of Krishna consciousness. The Madhyam Adhikari or a second class devotee has firm conviction in Krishna consciousness, but he cannot support his conviction by citing Shastric references. The neophyte devotees does not yet have firm faith. In this way, the devotees are tight. The standard of devotion...
Yes. So right now it's on the basis of faith and knowledge. So for Uttama and Madhyama, their faith is unshakable. For Kanishta, it is totally shakable. For Uttama, his knowledge is complete. He can present Vedic evidences to make his point. For Madhyama, he can also do it, but sometimes he may not be able to do it. For Kanishta, very less chances of it. Now, the next paragraph talks about in terms of how Madhyama, Uttama, Madhyama, Kanishta look at the whole world. What is their vision? That is what we describe. Please read.
The standard of devotion is also categorized in the same way. A neophyte believes that only love of Krishna or Krishna consciousness is very good, but he may not know the basis of pure Krishna consciousness or how one can become a perfect devotee. Sometimes in the heart of a neophyte, there is attraction for karma, jnana, or yoga. When he is free and transcendental to mix devotional activity, he becomes a second-class devotee. When he becomes expert in logic and can refer to the Shastras, he becomes a first-class devotee. Devotees are also described as positive, comparative, and superlative in terms of their love and attachment for Krishna.
Fine. This is the point here. In other words, for Uttamadhikari, as we read in the text when we described it before in the session itself, three things. He sees everything in relation to Krishna. He sees every living entity as part and parcel of Krishna. And third, he sees Krishna within everything, with everything and everyone. That is the vision of Uttamadhikari. For Kanishtadhikari is entirely opposite of Uttamadhikari, whereas Kanishtadhikari only sees presence of Krishna in the deity. He cannot see Krishna related to anything else. He sees Krishna to be totally disconnected from everything, which means for him the deity is only the deity. The deity is only the Lord. So if he does any service, he is willing to do any service for the deities. Now, deity is not as important as Padma Purana says. Krishna says very clearly, those who say they are my devotees are not my devotees, Arjuna. Those who say that devotees of my devotees are my devotees. So Madhyamadhikari, what is the point? A Madhyamadhikari understands that Krishna, when we say that I am a devotee of Krishna, does not mean that I am devotee of Krishna. I am the devotee of the devotees of Krishna. Therefore, a Madhyamadhikari serves Vaishnava with far much more attention and care, or also on the same level of the Lord. He does not discriminate between Vaishnavas and the Lord like that. Whereas in the neophyte stage, there is hardly any attention or respect given towards the devotees. And that's the point being mentioned here. Like that in the paragraphs, we'll see that in the Isopanisad purport also. Sarvabhuteshu yah pashyat bhagavad bhavam atmanah bhutani bhagavati atmani esha bhagavat uttamaha. Translation, please.
A person advanced in devotional service sees within everything the soul of souls, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna. Consequently, he always sees the form of Supreme Personality of Godhead as the cause of all causes and understands that all things are situated in him.
So if anyone is interested to read more, there are more parameters described here, but nonetheless this subject matter would be discussed at length in the Nectar of Instruction. Here Srila Prabhupada mentions few things, so we'll take a look at it. For the sake of today's session, I'll just walk you through with the presentation, with the graphs that we have in the presentation. So vision of spiritually advanced devotees. So next time when we meet, we'll look at the purport, and we'll also look into the details of this section. But for today, I'll just give you the graph, the summary of the purport. There are three types of visions, or three levels of devotees: Kanishta, Madhyama, Uttama. Second thing, Prabhupada talks about how to cultivate spiritual vision. So Yama and Niyama is being discussed, what to accept and what to reject. So who is a Kanishta? This is all based on Prabhupada purport. It is said to be the lowest stage. Kanishta in English gets translated to neophyte. Neophyte, you can say the one who desires new rasas in fighting is called as neophyte. This is a stage, a level where the person is still very much absorbed into material consciousness. So it's a lower stage. Prabhupada says he goes to temple, nowhere else. He thinks Lord exists only in the temple. At this stage, at Kanishta level, one cannot understand others' position, spiritual elevation. At this stage, Kanishta, the person who is in Kanishta consciousness, he is convinced that he is Uttama and everyone else is Kanishta. Something like Duryodhan. When Dronacharya had asked Duryodhan and Yudhishthira Maharaj both, Duryodhan, go and find something inferior to you. I believe that was a question. Duryodhan, go and find something, it's probably somebody inferior to you. And Yudhishthira Maharaj, go and find somebody superior to you. Both went and came back. And then Dronacharya asked Duryodhan, So could you find anyone inferior to you? He said, what did he say? Inferior to you. He said, actually, no. The question asked to Duryodhana was, go and find somebody superior to you. So Duryodhana came back and said, my dear Gurudev, I am the best, I am the greatest, there is no one superior to me in the kingdom. And the Yudhishthira Maharaj said, go and ask anyone inferior to you. And when he came back, and Yudhishthira Maharaj said, my dear Gurudev, there is no one inferior to me because I am the lowest most. This is the consciousness of Kanishta and Uttama, where Kanishta thinks he is the best. Follows routines, which means rituals, without understanding the need of it. A quarrelsome person who gets into fight. Trivial subject matters are more important than the core Krishna conscious activities. And the Kanishta are also called as pious materialist, which means those who are religious minded, yet they're having a lot of material desires. They come to Krishna consciousness for the purpose of getting relief from distress, for the purpose of getting some Lakshmi and different things like that. Whereas Madhyama are the one, they see whom they see Supreme Lord, devotees, innocent and atheists. Like this, they make discrimination. And how do they behave towards this four? Towards the Supreme Lord, they love. Towards the devotees, they make friends. Towards the innocent, they show compassion. And towards the atheist, they avoid. So Kanishtadhikari thinks himself to be the best. So there is no question of him at his stage to make a discrimination, because he is the best, everyone is lowest. For Uttama, there is no question of making discrimination again, because he thinks he is the lowest, everyone is better than him as a devotee. It is only at the stage of Madhyama where a devotee can make a discrimination. And this is a platform where we can actually preach or share the message of Krishna consciousness. Kanishta cannot preach because he is so proud and plus has no knowledge. Uttama cannot preach because he thinks he is the lowest, everyone is great. If everyone is great, how can he be a teacher? Only at the stage of Madhyama, somebody can share the message of Krishna consciousness, because he has the ability to make discrimination among different people. Uttama, he sees everything in relation to Lord, does not discriminate. Everyone is pure devotee for him except for oneself. He sees in terms of, for example, if he sees a dog, how would Uttamadhikari see the dog? When he looks at the dog, he would see, oh, this is a living entity who is suffering in the body of dog because of his past sinful activities. Maybe Kanishta may think, oh, what a cute dog. Maybe if I can have him as a puppy, how great my time would be. So he thinks maybe in the form of enjoyment. So that's the difference. He is not misled by material bodies. In other words, he does not make any judgment or conclusion based on somebody is poor, somebody is rich, somebody is beautiful or not. At a Kanishta stage, what is their understanding of a good devotee is somebody wears a nice dhoti kurta, sings very nicely, speaks very nicely. So all external parameters, but that is not the parameter for Uttama. And he sees spiritual spark like that. So that is about these things. We'll continue this discussion ahead when we meet next time. There are some very important points here. So next week when we meet, we'll discuss 6th and 7th verse together. So in essence, in this 6th and 7th verse, two things are being discussed. First is the vision of an Uttamadhikari. How to cultivate the vision. Prabhupada will make a point in the purport. And the one who is an Uttamadhikari does not hate or does not envy. And the 7th verse talks about how an Uttamadhikari sees every living entity in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. An Uttamadhikari does not have tatra ko moha kaha shoka. He is never in illusion and he is never in lamentation. That would be described in text number 7. And we'll discuss some of the history of the modern world in the context of the subject matter that we have, but we'll do that next time. So in essence, we just briefly touched upon the 3 levels of devotees: Kanishtam, Madhyama, Uttam Adhikari, like that. So Hare Krishna.